Hey everyone, Sam here at Model Chili Scale Models, and here I have a couple of Bandai 1:350 scale Millennium Falcons. Now I've got two because the one on the left is from Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope, so the very original Millennium Falcon, and the one on the right is from Episode 5 Empire Strikes Back, where they made slight modifications to the underside and added a couple of extra landing gear, and so that's what those two boxes were added for. So they're basically the same, slightly different. So I thought I would build them all both in one video. And yeah, so like my previous Bandai tiny kits, the construction will be very simple. It'll just be mainly a painting job. So let's get stuck in. Okay, so inside of each box we've got the instructions on the underside of the lid there. And the first bag contains stickers for the markings, so these are not water slide decals, they're actually just peel off stickers, which I probably won't be using, and a stand and base as well, and a second bag of the plastic. So as you can see, really simple construction. You just got the top side, the lower side, and a few extra details. And very similar in the other box. So again, instructions there. And everything in one bag this time. So you've got the stand, the Falcon, and as before, a sheet of stickers. So just having a closer look at the stickers themselves. So they are very, very thin. They're definitely usable, but as I like to apply a wash on my models, I'm just always afraid that the wash will catch the edge of the sticker, even though it is really thin. And yeah, because they're really quite sticky, once you place them down on the model, they're very difficult to remove, whereas with water slide decals, you can sort of move them around a little bit just to get them in that perfect position before they set. So yeah, I probably won't be, well, definitely won't be using those. I'll just hand paint everything instead. So for the New Hope version, we've got some of the side wall details, quad blasters, radar dish there, and the underside, so you can see it's quite flat in this section here. And there's the top parts of the maintenance bays in the front. And so docking ports, part of the cockpit, engines at the back. And the upper half. So a pretty fine, sharp detail in there, even though it's quite a small size. As you can see, as the light catches all the raised bits, looks really good. And the stand. So the Empire Strikes Back version has exactly all the same sprues, which is expected, except for the underside. So just highlighting the difference here. So there's Episode 4 version on the left and Episode 5 version on the right. So you can see the difference there. And just as a point of interest, the larger 172 perfect grade Millennium Falcon uses the New Hope version, whereas the 1:144 scale Millennium Falcon from Bandai uses the Empire Strikes Back version. So this is the only scale where you can actually get both versions at the same scale. Alrighty, so that's all of the parts plucked and trimmed. So now before painting, I'm just going to apply a layer of Tamiya fine surface primer from a can, and then get on to painting. Alright, so for the painting step, what I've decided to do is do each Falcon slightly differently, because they're similar enough and there's no point in building and painting exactly the same model. So I'm going to use a slightly different technique for the Empire Strikes Back version, which is this one on the left. And so what I'm going to do for that is put on a base coat of just black using Vallejo Model Air, and then I'll do a top coat of Vallejo Model Air White Grey 71119. And for the New Hope version, on top of the primer, I'm just going to spray on just the straight white grey without a black undercoat. And so we'll see the different techniques and how they compare once the top coat is on. Alright, so I've got all the parts painted in the white grey, and as you can see, the one on the left without the black base coat is quite a bit different to the one on the right. I could apply more white coat layers to this one and make it look a bit more like the one on the left, but I've kind of liked the difference. You can definitely see the black in all the recessed areas where I haven't quite got 100% coverage. So it's just a really quick and easy way to get a lot of shading and shadow detail in all of those hard to reach places without needing to do a wash or much weathering. So that's the main reason I use a black undercoat. And as for the one where I didn't, so it's all just flat, same colour in there, but I will be doing a bit more weathering on this one. But I just wanted to see the difference in the two techniques, and I think this demonstrates it quite well. Of course, the black, it really depends how many layers of paint you put over the top as to how it's going to look. This was fairly medium layer, so not too light, not too heavy. So that's why it's come out a lot more grey than the one without the black. There. So I think I might do just another light coat of the white grey on top of this, but before that I'm just going to fit everything together. So then I can paint it all in one go and avoid any uneven lines when all of the parts go together. Now this is a good example of something that's caught me out a little bit. So I sprayed the top of the maintenance bays black, and I was just going to go over the white grey again once it had all been put together, but because it's sprayed over this bit here, it's left a black edge around this piece here once I attached the intersection of the sort of mouthpiece in the mandibles. So I'm just going to quickly spray over white grey over the top of that, because it'll be quite hard to spray once the two halves are put together. Alright, so I'm going to leave off the turrets for now, just because I want to be able to paint the little window piece in there, and the guns will get in the way, so I'll just leave those off for now until it's all complete. Okay, so before moving on to detail painting, there was a little detail that almost escaped me, and that's adding all of the battle damage that's actually physically moulded into the Falcon. So there's quite a bit of blaster scoring around here, so I'm going to drill out some little holes. I've just marked in with a marker pen as to where those should go, and there's a few under here, so there's some quite prominent scarring along this section and another little crater in the docking port. Oh, and there's a bit of scarring across this section here. So for the holes, I'm just going to drill out some little pits in this bit. Nothing too major, I just want a slight impression for these bits. And then for the scarring, I'm just going to use a triangular metal file which has got a point at the end, and I'm just going to scrape into the plastic across here. Again, it doesn't need to be too dramatic, I just want a slight pit for the wash to settle into. Alright, so with the battle damage applied, I'm now going to start painting on all of the different coloured panels. So I'm just using a few basic colours. So for the red, I'm using Vallejo Model Air Fire Red 71084, and a couple of greys, Pale Blue Grey 046 and Light Skull Grey 121. And of course it wouldn't be a model chili video without me screwing something up. I've painted one of these red panels in the wrong place, so just a few layers of the white grey should cover that mistake up. Alright, so that's all of the coloured panels completed on both versions, top and bottom. And while I was looking at the reference materials for all of the different panels, I noticed there's a slight error on the instructions for the New Hope version. So for the sticker sheet, now they've got the little placement guide here, and they've actually listed the red panels that actually appear on the Empire Strikes Back version, because of course the on the New Hope version, this red coloured panel is covered up by these landing gear boxes, and so on the Empire Strikes Back version there's a slight difference here and another little red one there. But in the instructions for the New Hope version, they're doing the Empire Strikes Back version, so they've obviously just reused the same sticker sheet for this version, which is wrong, but I suppose it saved them a little bit of money. So that's just something to look out for if you're doing the New Hope version. Just make sure your red panels on this side are actually the right ones, but it's a minor difference. And so what I'm going to do next is just a few shades of grey around these large grey flat areas, just to break them up a little bit. So not quite as obvious as the painted panels, but just subtle enough just to make it a bit more interesting. Right, so I've painted the canopy pieces in a black grey colour, and now I'm just going to finish them off with a touch of black wash, hopefully just to clean up some of the rough edges. So now I'm just using the black wash to fill in the engine vents. Alright, so now it's time to move on to the really fun bit, and that's all of the weathering. So first I'm going to just apply some chipping effects all over the painted panels. And so I'm just going to get some dabs of the base colour, which is the white grey, on the end of a pointed brush. And I'm just going to go in and just make some initial chipping impressions. It'll probably appear quite faint at first, but I'll be able to go in later on and add a bit more over the top and make it look a bit more effective. I'm now going to use some of this dark grey wash, Vallejo Model Wash 76517. I'm just going to fill in some of the battle damage. And going via photos of the pseudo model, there's a few black pock marks around here. And now, using a very tiny amount of the wash on a brush, I'm just going to add in some splash marks. Now I'm going to add a bit of a staining effect, and for that I've got some Tamiya Weathering Master. I'm going to be using the soot colour. And this comes with quite a large applicator, which is suitable for larger models, but for such a small scale, I'm just going to go in with a small brush and wipe a bit on the end there. And then apply it around the areas where there needs to be. Bit of a dark stained effect. And I'm going to do the same to apply the exhaust streaks. also going to apply it in some of these areas just to indicate a bit of a shaded area, which again replicates the studio model. Had some sort of dark staining, shading down these lines around the turret circle, and also down the front piece here. So I think I've applied it a little bit too heavy here. So what I can do is I can just get a cotton bud, just dip it in a little bit of water, and that'll easily wipe away. And I'm just going to use the applicator brush here, which is really soft, and I can just wipe away any dust that's sitting on the model and just sort of help to blend it all in a little bit. Now I do have to be slightly careful because this can actually still wipe away as I'm handling it, so I don't want to apply too much just yet. I might apply a bit more at the end, and then I can put a flat coat over it to seal it all in so I don't end up wiping it away and getting big black fingerprints everywhere. Now I'm just going to use a little bit of Vallejo light grey wash. I'm just going to apply that in small doses. I don't want to cover the whole thing, but just in areas that I think could use a little bit more definition. And now just using a tiny bit of light rust wash, I'm going to apply some little spots of rust. And going by references of the studio model, there's quite a bit more rust on the underside, which makes sense because all of the water is going to be running off and then moving down towards the centre and then sort of pooling before it drips off, so there's going to be quite a bit more rust underneath. Alright, so now it's time to add a bit of streaking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the soot pigment that I used before, but instead of just applying it straight to the brush, I'm just going to wet the brush a little bit. Now this is mostly water, but there's a few drops of acrylic thinner just to loosen it up a little bit. So I'm just going to dip the brush in there and then line the brush with the pigment. Then I'll wipe off some of the excess and then go in here and just add some streaking, trying to get it parallel with the direction of flow. Now it's going to be quite dark initially, but what I'm going to do is come in later on and kind of clean it up a little bit and blend it in so it doesn't look so harsh. But I just want some initial lines in here first. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is just rinse off the brush in the solution, wipe it off, and then come back and just sort of brush it over just to get some nice realistic looking streaks. And it also helps you can kind of change the direction a little bit. Kind of softens the edge and blends it in a bit. For the other side, I just want to do a little bit of rust streaking. So I've just got the rust wash that I used. And instead of using the pigment, I'm just going to use this. I'll just put a few dabs here and there. Wait for it to mostly dry and then I'll streak it out. So all the streaking's been done, so what I'm doing now is I'm just getting a bit more of the acrylic thinner on a brush and just going back over some of these lines and sort of refining them and cleaning them up a little bit. Just make them a little bit thinner and a little bit sharper. So now I'm going to apply some markings, and the Falcon has dozens of tiny little black lines all around the panels. So I'm going to do that with a small marker pen, and this is 0.05 mils thick, so half a millimeter. And yeah, so I'm just going to go around and carefully draw on some tiny little dash lines. These are probably going to be a little too big for scale, but it'll be cool to just see them dotted around. It just adds a little bit more detail. And yes, I am looking at a reference just off to the side, just to make sure I get it mostly in the right areas. And I'm doing this after I did all the streaking because this is not a permanent marker, so these will quite easily rub off. So I didn't want to rub them off while I was doing all my cleaning up steps. So once these are applied, I'll just seal them all in with a flat coat. I'll also use it just to do a little bit more battle damage, so there's a few little black marks around here, and some up here. And now with a touch of red paint, I'm just going to add in some of the red markings. Alright, so now that all of the markings are done, I'm just going to do one final step, and that is to add a bit of blue glue to the engine. So I've just got a mix of, I think it was 2 parts blue to 6 or 7 parts white, and just mix them with a little bit of water just to thin it down to a really nice milky consistency so it flows nice and easy. So that's a nice light blue, and then I'm simply just going to apply it all over the back of the engine. Like that. And I'm not too bothered if it gets up in here because it just simulates a bit of a glow on the inside of the cowling. Alright, so with everything complete, I'm going to seal everything in with a coat of Tamiya's Flat Clear TS80 from a can. And for the stands, I'm just going to assemble these and then spray them with a coat of Tamiya TS29 Semi-Gloss Black. and then we'll be done. Alrighty, so here they are, done and dusted, and I'm pretty happy with how these have come out. The initial difference of the different base coats actually diminished over time as I was applying more layers of weathering, so it's actually quite a lot less noticeable than it was at the start, but you can still kind of see the Empire Strikes Back version is a little bit more grey compared to the whitish, the warmish white of the A New Hope version, and I kind of like how that difference has come out. The model they used in Empire Strikes Back, they actually used a smaller studio model, which was a lot more grungy than the original A New Hope version. So I kind of like the fact that there's a little bit of a difference there. And yeah, the New Hope version was very similar to how I did the larger 1/7/2 scale perfect grade Falcon, and it's come out looking pretty similar. So yeah, I was able to replicate a lot of those techniques over to the smaller one, and yeah, even though it's quite a difference in size, the technique's still applied, and you can get a pretty nice representation of the Falcon using those weathering styles. But as always, I'm keen to know what you guys think of the differences and the final result. Let me know which one you prefer or which one you think works best. Both techniques are perfectly valid, and as you can see, they come out looking pretty similar in the end. But yeah, it's just a slight difference in how to achieve certain shading effects initially without having to do much work for the Empire Strikes Back version. And so taking a look at each one, so we've got the New Hope version. Just take the stand off. And so I tried to keep all of the weathering and the markings the same across both models, but there are slight differences between them, so they're not 100% copies of each other. But yeah, quite like how the engine effect turned out with the blue wash in the back. I know it's a lot more whitish than the movie, but yeah, I think the blue looks okay. Yeah, nice front view. There isn't a lot of detail in there, right down the centre of the mouthpiece. So that's one area that they didn't quite translate well across from the other models. But luckily you can hardly see it. And yeah, it's a pity they didn't come with little landing feet. Would have been cool to have this in the landed position. But that might have been a bit fiddly. And taking a close look at the Empire Strikes Back version, again very similar. There. It's a shame the back of the dish wasn't a bit more detailed. So the sort of the strut that leads up to the dish is quite simple on this version. It's supposed to be a lot more intricate, which you get on the larger scale models. So that's kind of the only thing that really stands out on this kit as far as lack of detail goes. Everything else looks pretty good and fairly accurate. And one thing I didn't point out right at the start was the other difference of the Empire Strikes Back version is the all of the landing lights they applied to the bottom around the edge of the hull there. So just small little detailed add-ons that they stuck on. And the size of these is quite nice. They make a really good display model for a desk or some other small space. So they fit well just about everywhere, and they're still big enough to hold lots and lots of detail. So yeah, would make a perfect stocking filler this Christmas. Alright, so that pretty much wraps up this video build. I know it's been a bit longer than my usual mini kit builds, but considering it was two models, I thought I didn't want to cut out too much, so hopefully it's not been too long and tedious. And if you have made it this far, then thank you very much for watching. I always appreciate my viewers, and especially those who leave a comment or a like or a dislike. All your feedback helps and just gives me a better idea about what sort of content my audience is after and what sort of things I should be doing or what sort of things I shouldn't be doing, so please let me know. And as always, I'll have photos up on my Instagram, so you can go check those out. I'll put a link in the description below. And if you hit that join button on my channel, then you'll get exclusive access to hundreds of detailed photos of all my previous builds, including this one, from start to finish, and that you can even add comments on. So with that plug out of the way, I'll wrap this up. Hope you've enjoyed watching, and I hope to see you next time. So until then, take the Professor in the back and plug him into the hyperdrive.